he whispered to himself. Get it together, old man. But the words didn't carry the strength they usually did. He leaned back against the stall wall, letting his head rest there. His eyes drifted shut. Memories flickered in his mind. Memory. As a little girl running through the barn, giggling, calling his name, her tiny hand grabbing his, trusting him completely. Those were simple days, warm days. Days when he felt strong enough to protect the whole world. And now, she thought he was holding her back. The pain in his chest didn't just hurt physically, it stabbed deep into his heart. He felt the loneliness of the moment wrap around him like a cold blanket. He wanted to tell Amy he understood, wanted to tell her she was under too much stress. He wanted to comfort her, like he always had, but he couldn't. Not yet, not when. He could barely keep himself steady. His breathing grew more shallow, each inhale tighter than the last. He pressed his palm hard against his chest again, this time not to hide the pain, but to fight it. Then dash another sharp spike, or a flash of pain. So strong, it forced a gasp out of him. Jack's hand grabbed the edge of the stall door, knuckles white, body trembling. He stayed still for a long moment, trying to wait it out, trying to stay conscious, trying to hold on. Outside the barn, footsteps approached, soft, hesitant. Amy's voice called his name. Jack opened his eyes, but the barn spun around him. He didn't have long before everything slipped into the barn, slowly. Her heart thudding louder with every cautious step. The door creaked behind her, the long echo making the space feel even emptier than it was. She scanned the rows of stalls, expecting to see Jack brushing a horse or tightening a saddle like usual. But the barn looked still. Too still. Jack. Her voice was soft, unsteady. No answer. Amy walked deeper inside, her boots crunching lightly against the old straw on the floor. A strange coldness crept up her spine, like the air itself was warning her something was wrong. She paused, listening. Nothing. Not even Jack humming, which he always did when he worked alone. Then she saw it. The horse brush lying in the dirt, Jack. Never left tools on the ground. Amy's breath caught. She stepped forward, her movements quickening without her meaning them to. Her eyes scanned the barn more urgently now, searching every stall, every corner. Jack. She whispered again, and then she found him. Jack was slumped beside the stall wall, one hand gripping the wooden frame, the other pressed against his chest. His face was pale to pale. His breath came in short, uneven pulls, as if each one cost him everything he had left. Amy's world froze. Jack! She ran to him and dropped to her knees, her hand shaking as she touched his arm. It felt cold. Not icy, but cold enough to terrify her. Jack, look at me. Please look at me. Lislet seemed to lift his head, but the effort seemed heavy, overwhelming. His eyes flickered open, tired, hurting, but still carrying that familiar softness when they landed on her. Amy. He breathed, barely more than a whisper. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Jack, what's happening? Why didn't you tell me you were feeling like this? Her voice cracked, raw with fear and regret. I didn't mean what I said. I didn't mean any of it. Jack tried to speak, but the words got lost as another wave of pain tightened through him. His jaw clenched, his body trembling. Amy grabbed, his hands squeezing it hard as if holding on would keep him from slipping further. Stay with me, she begged. Please, stay with me. I'm calling for help. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers failing to work properly as panic surged through her. She dialed without looking, tears blurring everything. Lou, she shouted when the call connected. Need to come to the barn right now. Something's wrong with Jack. Really wrong. Ah! She dropped the phone and turned back to him, cupping his face in trembling hands. Jack, I'm so sorry. I never should have said those things. I was scared, stressed, but I took it out on you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Jack's eyelids fluttered, his breath even shorter now. But he managed a tiny, fragile smile, one that broke Amy's heart even more. Amy, it's okay, he whispered, though it wasn't okay at all. She shook her head, crying harder. No, it's not. Please just hold on. Please. Footsteps pounded outside. Lou, Tim, and Georgie, rushing toward the barn. But for Amy, time had already slowed. Every second stretching painfully as she held Jack's hand and prayed he wouldn't let go. Everything inside her screamed the same. Fear she might already be too late. The moment Lou, Tim and Georgie burst into the barn. The calm Heartland morning was shattered. Their footsteps echoed through the wooden walls, mixing with Amy's broken voice as she held on to Jack like he was slipping from her hands. Lou gasped the second she saw him. Oh my God. Jack. She dropped to the ground beside Amy, her own hands shaking. Tim froze for half a second, his tough exterior cracking as he took in the sight. Even he couldn't hide the panic rising in his eyes. Georgie stood at the doorway, frozen, her breath caught in her throat. She had never seen Jack like this. No one had. Tim snapped into action. Lou, call the ambulance now. I already did. Lou's voice was high, breathless. They're on their way. Jack tried to lift his head again, but the movement sent a tremor through him. Amy tightened her hold on his hand, whispering soft words that came out between sobs. It's okay. Help is coming. You're going to be okay, Jack. Please. Stay with me. Lou brushed hair away from Jack's forehead, trying to steady him even though her own hands were trembling. Dad, listen to me. You're not alone. We're all here. Just breathe, okay? Jack's breaths were shallow, each one smaller than the last. The faint smile he'd forced earlier had disappeared. Now there was only pain deep, exhausting pain that made his body feel too heavy to move. Tim knelt beside him, fighting the emotion building in his chest. Jack Bartlett had been the strongest man he knew, the anchor of Heartland, the one who never fell. Seeing him like this felt unreal, like the world had tilted off its axis. Hang in there, old friend, Tim said quietly. You're not allowed to leave us. Not today. Kami couldn't stop crying. She pressed her forehead against Jack's shoulder, guilt swallowing her whole. This is my fault, she whispered, her voice raw. If I hadn't said those things. If I had just listened. Lou grabbed Amy's arm, firm but gentle. Amy, no. This isn't your fault. But Amy couldn't hear her, not with her heart crushing itself from the inside. Outside, the distant sound of sirens cut through the silence, growing louder by the second. Relief and fear collided in Amy's chest all at once. They're here, Georgie said, her voice shaking. The barn doors flew open as paramedics rushed inside with medical bags and a stretcher. The room filled with commands, fast motions, and harsh breaths. The calm ranch suddenly felt like an emergency room. Double quotes, sir. Stay with us, one paramedic said as they checked Jack's pulse. Another placed an oxygen mask over his face. Responsive, but weak. We need to move fast. Amy backed away only because they asked her to. She stood with Lou, her body shaking as she watched them lift Jack onto the stretcher. Her hands reached out instinctively as if she could still hold him. Please, Amy whispered, voice barely audible. No, don't take him away from me. The paramedics pushed the stretcher toward the ambulance. Urgency in every step. Amy followed, her legs weak, her chest tight. She felt like her heart was being dragged out of her body with every inch the stretcher moved away. The ambulance doors opened with a sharp metallic click, and Amy knew the moment they closed. Everything at Heartland would change. The ambulance. Lights painted the ranch in flashing red and white, bouncing off the fences, the barn, the house, turning everything familiar into something cold and frightening. Amy stood just outside the ambulance, staring at Jack lying motionless on the stretcher. His chest rose and fell under the oxygen mask, but each breath looked weaker. Slower, Lou wrapped an arm around Amy's shoulders, trying to steady her. But Amy felt numb. Her eyes didn't move from Jack, not even for a second. She couldn't. The thought of looking away terrified her, as if losing sight of him even for a moment might make him disappear forever. Ma'am, we need to go, one paramedic said gently. We'll take him to the hospital right away. Amy nodded, but her body didn't move. Her mind refused to catch up with reality. She kept replaying the same moment over and over again, the words she threw at him, the pain on his face, the silence afterward. She felt the weight of it crushing her chest. Tim stepped forward. I'll drive behind the ambulance. Lou, you go with Amy. No, Amy whispered suddenly. I want to go with Jack. I have to go with him. The paramedic nodded. Only one person can ride with him in the back, but you can sit up front. Amy shook her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. I need to be close, please. Lou pulled Amy into a tight hug, holding her as she sobbed. Go, Lou whispered softly. He would want you there. Amy wiped her face and climbed into the ambulance. She settled into the small bench seat right beside the stretcher. She could barely breathe. The space around her felt too small, too bright, too loud. Machines beeped steadily, each sound reminding her how fragile this moment was. Jack's hand rested near the edge of the stretcher. Amy reached out and gently placed her fingers over his. His skin felt warm, but not strong, not the way Jack Bartlett usually felt. She squeezed his hand lightly. I'm here, she whispered. I'm right here. The paramedic adjusted a monitor. His pulse is unstable. We need to move now. The door slammed shut. Amy flinched. The ambulance jolted forward, sirens screaming. Everything at Heartland changed in one moment. One mistake. Mid-sentence. Amy never meant to say. And now Jack, the strongest man on the ranch, is about to fall harder than anyone ever expected. This is the moment when Heartland's beating. Heart finally breathed. Morning at Heartland should have felt peaceful, but something in the air was tight, almost heavy. The sky was clear, the horses moved calmly in their pens, yet the ranch didn't feel the same. Jack walked out of the house slowly, his shoulders a little lower than usual. He rubbed his chest once, as if trying to ease a small ache he didn't want anyone to notice. The ranch had always been his home, his pride. But lately the weight of holding everything together had begun to settle deep inside him. Amy was already in the training pen, working with a young horse that wouldn't settle. She moved quickly, her voice sharp, her frustration louder than she realized. She had barely slept, stressed over a failed training job and worried about falling behind. When Jack approached her, she didn't even look up. She was locked inside. Her own worry, her own battle. Jack leaned on the fence, watching her with the same patient eyes he had since she was a child, but today he could see something was off. Amy, he said gently, you're pushing too fast. Slow down. The horse isn't following you because he's scared. But Amy wasn't in the mood to hear advice. She tugged the rope harder, her voice rising. I don't need to slow down, Jack. I need to fix this before it gets worse. Jack frowned, stepping closer. You're not fixing anything by forcing it. You know better. Words were calm, but they hit her like pressure. She felt cornered, embarrassed and tired. And when her emotions took over, the words slipped out without warning, sharp, heavy, and painful. Jack, you're holding me back. You always do. Silence fell as soon as she said it. Even the horse stopped moving. Jack froze. For a moment, he didn't breathe. Those words, coming from the girl he had raised like his own, cut deeper than she understood. His face changed. His face changed. His eyes dimmed, his jaw tightened. He looked away, staring at the ground as if searching for something to steady him. The hurt wasn't loud, but it was deep, and it reached a part of him he kept hidden. Amy realized instantly what she had done. But the moment was already broken. Jack took a slow step back, his breath uneven. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice, simply whispered, "All right," and turned away. As he walked toward the barn, he pressed a hand against his chest again, this time with more force. But Amy didn't see it, not yet. All she saw was the man she loved like a grandfather walking away from her. Because of something she couldn't take back, KS. Jack's boots scraped softly against the dirt as he walked away from the training pen. The space behind him felt strangely quiet, as if Amy's words were still hanging in the air, echoing inside his mind. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even disappointed. He was hurt, the kind of hurt he hadn't felt in a long time. The kind that sinks deep and stays there. Each step he took seemed slower than the last. He kept one hand pressed lightly against his chest, hidden beneath his jacket, hoping the pressure would calm the tightness he felt creeping through him. It wasn't the first time he had pushed himself too hard. It wasn't the first time stress had caught up with him. But today, the pain felt different, sharper, heavier. as if it carried Amy's words with it. Inside the barn, the smell of hay and leather should have brought him comfort, but today even the familiar warmth felt distant. Jack stopped beside an empty stall and leaned forward, trying to steady his breathing. He closed his eyes, hearing Amy's voice replay in his head. "You're holding me back. You always do." The words stung more than he wanted to admit. He had spent years lifting Amy up, guiding her, catching her when she fell. And now, somehow, she believed he was the one dragging her down. Jack wasn't a man who crumbled easily, but today, something inside him cracked. He reached for a saddle, pretending he needed something to do, but the weight was too much. He set it down gently, rubbing his forehead. His body felt tired far, more tired than he'd let anyone see. But his heart, that was what truly ached. Not because Amy meant to hurt him, but because he loved her enough for the words to matter. Outside the barn, the wind carried faint sounds of horses and the distant murmur of ranch life. Everything continued as if nothing had happened. But inside these wooden walls, Jack felt the ranch closing in around him, silence becoming almost suffocating. He whispered to himself something he rarely did. "Maybe I am slowing down. Maybe she's right." His voice trembled, just slightly, and it scared him. Jack Bartlett didn't shake. He didn't doubt. But today he felt age, fear, and heartbreak all at once. He tried to straighten up, but another sharp pain gripped his chest. He winced, grabbing the stall door for support, breath hitching. He stayed like that for a moment, waiting for the ache to pass. When it finally eased, he forced himself to stand tall again, though he felt anything but strong. Jack didn't know Amy was already regretting everything. He didn't know she was standing outside the barn looking toward the door, wishing she could take back her words. All he knew was that something inside him felt unsteady, like the ground beneath him had shifted, and he had no idea that this was only the beginning of a moment that would change Heartland forever. Amy stood frozen in the training pen, long after Jack walked away. The rope hung loose in her hand, the horse watching her with soft, confused eyes. She could barely hear anything around her. All she heard were her own words replaying again and again, each time sounding worse than the last. "You're holding me back. You always do." She covered her mouth with her hand, shocked by herself. She had never spoken to Jack like that, not even on her worst days. The moment the words left her lips, she felt something inside her sink, like a stone dropping into deep water. She hadn't meant them. She hadn't even believed them. They were just frustration, fear, pressure. Now they had landed right on the person who cared for her more than anyone. Amy stepped out of the pen and leaned against the fence, struggling to breathe normally. The ranch looked the same as it always did. Sunlight on the fields, dust lifting under the hooves, the wind brushing the trees. But she felt completely disconnected from it all, as if a piece of her had snapped off and was now missing. She whispered, "What have I done?" But the wind carried the words away. Her thoughts raced. Jack had always been her anchor, the steady voice, the calm guidance, the reminder that she didn't need to be perfect. She had thrown all of that back at him because of her own stress. She felt small, too small, like she didn't deserve the ranch she stood on, the trust he had given her her whole life. Georgie walked by, noticing Amy's blank stare. "Amy, you okay?" Amy swallowed hard, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "Yeah, I just need a minute." But Georgie could see the truth, the redness around her eyes, the tension in her voice, the way she kept glancing toward the barn where Jack had gone. "Did something happen with Jack?" Georgie asked gently. Amy's breath trembled. "I said something I shouldn't have. Something really bad." Georgie stepped closer, concern growing. "Go talk to him, Jack. He'll understand." But Amy shook her head slowly. She didn't just feel guilt, she felt fear. Fear that this time she had crossed a line she couldn't step back over. Fear that the hurt in Jack's eyes wasn't something he could brush off. "I will," Amy said softly. "I just need to think about how." Inside, she knew she was lying. She wasn't scared of apologizing. She was scared of what she might see when she looked Jack in the eyes again. Would he forgive her? Or had she damaged something between them forever? Amy took a deep breath and finally moved toward the barn. Each step felt heavy, like walking through water. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, more wrong than just words. Her chest tightened with an unfamiliar dread. She reached the barn door and stopped, placing her hand on the wood. The silence inside didn't feel normal. It felt too still, too quiet. Amy's heart picked up speed. She whispered Jack's name, barely audible. And then she pushed the door open, without knowing her whole world was about to change. Inside the barn, the air was cold and still, as if the whole space was holding its breath. Dust floated in the sunlight. Wooden boards. Usually, this place gave Jack comfort, a quiet corner of the ranch where he could breathe. No. But today, even the silence felt heavy on his shoulders. Jack sat on a small wooden bench beside an old saddle stand. His hands rested on his knees, but they weren't steady. His fingers kept twitching. Small, uncontrolled movements he tried to hide, even from himself. He let out a long, shaky breath and leaned forward, elbows on his thighs, head down. He told himself it was just stress, just age, just exhaustion. He could push through it, like he always did, but the truth he refused to admit was pressing harder than ever. The ache in his chest wasn't just emotional, it had weight, depth, and a sharpness that scared him more than he wanted to admit. He rubbed his chest again, slower this time, as if the pressure of his palm could calm the storm building. Inside, a ripple of pain shot through him, stronger than before. Jack winced, swallowing a groan. He didn't want anyone to hear him, not Amy, not Lou, not anyone. He didn't want the ranch worrying. He didn't want to feel weak. Weakness was something Jack Bartlett never showed. He tried to distract himself. He reached for a horse brush, the rough wooden handle familiar against his.